My name is Russell Layton. I'm here to introduce you to a new feature in Panther called Scheduled Queries and Rules. This new capability complements Panther's streaming rules by enabling sophisticated detections based on aggregations and joins using historical data. Let me illustrate with an example detecting password spraying attacks. Password spraying is an attack where logins are attempted to many different users, but only a small number of common passwords are used. By keeping to only a small number of probing attempts, this attack is often not detected. Let me show you how you can detect it in Panther. Here's a SQL query that we're going to use to detect password spraying attacks. First, we're going to use AWS CloudTrail data. Now, actually, the technique I'm going to show you here can be applied to any kind of authentication logs. But in this particular example, we're going to use AWS CloudTrail. We're going to look back 1 hour. The p_occurs_since macro is a convenience function supplied by Panther to allow you to easily look back in time. We're going to restrict our CloudTrail records to those that are console sign-ins and those that fail. We're going to group by 1 and 2, which is the AWS region and the account ID. And now we're going to collect the count of distinct usernames that failed, and we're going to threshold that at 5. So this is detecting the spraying. And finally, we want some measure of activity, so we're also going to count the total number of failures in this period of time, and we're going to set a threshold of 10. So you can set these thresholds to anything that seems reasonable to you based on the activity that you're seeing on your network. But the inherent pattern that we're looking for is this both number of failures and diversity of the usernames. So this should detect password spraying attacks. Let's save it, and I'm going to call it password spraying. And I can schedule this in schedule queries in Panther with two kinds of schedules: a periodic schedule or a cron expression. The cron expressions are used for sophisticated scheduling, but in this case, I'm simply going to use a periodic schedule. So I'll set it to 60 minutes, so it'll run every hour, and I'm going to save it. Good, so now this will run every hour. Now we will build a scheduled rule. So we go to detections, we create a new one. In Panther, there are 3 kinds of detections. There's a rule, which is a streaming rule. Streaming rules take as their input events from logs. So here's some examples. You can pick one or a number of these to do detections against in Python. Or you can have a policy. And a policy goes against resources in the monitored AWS accounts. And finally, there's a scheduled rule. A scheduled rule is just like a streaming rule, except instead of the events that come out of ingested logs, it's the events that come out of SQL queries. So we're going to set a severity on this to critical. We're going to call this password spraying. We are targeting the query that we just set to run every hour. We're going to set a deduplication period for an hour. So I'm never going to get more than one alert or page or Slack message, or however we're doing our alerting, more than an hour. Panther takes care of that for you. And let's configure the functions, the Python part of the rule. Here, the rule function in normal streaming rules, this is where you would add your detection logic. But in this particular case, our detection logic is actually in the SQL itself. So we're simply going to return true, which means for every event in the SQL, we're going to get an alert. And I think I want to customize the title to give the person on call some context. So we want to have something like this: potential password spraying attack, account, and it gives the account number, in, and it gives the region. So When there are hits in that SQL query, and we do get alerts, you'll get a nice contextual message so you understand what's going on, and you can decide how to respond. So that's it. I save it. And now we're detecting password spraying. Happy hunting.